we're living longer and we have so much to offer. And it's like, I just want women to feel that. I want them to see their worth and to be excited about life. And my Spark experience is really helping them with that transition to how to get twice the meaning, twice the connection, and twice the joy coming into your empty nest year.
Big it up, big it up. Yep. Clear him up. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Here we go.
Welcome to Let's Talk Real with Mel. We are here with Cindy Cyr, world famous international copywriter, writer, author. She's written for Dan Kennedy, Zig Ziglar, and a host of others. And now with the new merger, doing some work with Russell Brunson and crew. So, well, you guys know her or may not know her or have known her from the copywriting world, from the author world. But we're here to actually talk about what she's been working on the past couple of years.
Thanks for having me. So, I've been working on a new project called The Joyful Empty Nester, and it's aimed at empty nest women. Really, I have two different main programs, core programs that I offer, and one of them is called the Spark Experience, which is really for that about to be an empty nester or a new empty nester or an empty nester that is stuck.
Okay.
You know,
well, know him now.
Yeah.
You know him to live on just for the audience. You know, we all have a vision of what an empty nester. I mean, the kids go off, but how did you find out that there was even a need for that?
You know, when I became a recent empty nester, it was like, at first there was a little bit of like, there was things going on and I couldn't figure out like why I was moody sometimes and things like that. And so it was my own internal struggle. And I started talking to all these people about it. And I interviewed my mom and I was like, what was your experience like? And, I realized that it was very different when she became an empty nester versus the way it is now, because now we're so much more connected and involved. We have the cell phones, so we know where our kids are all the time. They could reach them anytime. And we were off. My mom didn't know where I was.
Right. Yeah, well, we were little.
Where I told her I was, but she didn't know where I was. And, and that, like, I walked to school or caught the bus. I never had anybody drive me to school and pick me up. And now we do that. And even like, I think about, I was at like my son's practices and, every game and everything. My parents came to see me at games, but they never watched me at a practice, and so we're just so much more involved. And so the experience is way different than, what it was. And so I had this picture of what it was like for my mom, which was extremely different. She was like, I thought she went back to school and got her degree and, got a job and everything because she was trying to fill this time. She was like, oh no, it was the women's movement. I wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, oh, it had nothing to do with it. But now, I started having conversations with, my friends and a lot of people I know, and they really were struggling. A lot of people stuck, like some of them for years, they'd already been an empty nester and they were just stuck, like they couldn't figure out that meaning because there had been so much emphasis and focus on the kids that it was like, how do I shift the focus now? And what do I shift it to? And, there's just so...
Where do I go? So it really was almost a feeling of, okay, I've got all this energy. I've been pouring this energy into this purpose.
Right.
And now the purpose is kind of going on and growing up, and you've got fascinating kids. We'll talk about them in a little bit, so it's just about trying to redirect that purpose.
I mean, I had women telling me they felt invisible. They felt like they were shrinking, really, things. And I remember having a lunch with a group of women that I went to high school with, and I hadn't seen them in a long time, and we're getting together, and I asked them what they're all recent empty nesters, and so I'm asking them, so like, what's going on? And nobody could come up with anything. And I was looking at this group of women, and they, like at high school and stuff, like, man, they were like leaders and doers, and they were the captains of things, and like some really doing did amazing things when I think back at it of like what they were doing. and the organizations they were leading, and they couldn't, they were and I was like, okay, everybody come up with like one thing in the last year that's really cool. And there was only one person at the table that can come up with anything. And I thought, wow, that's just sad because, these women, I mean, they really, to raise these incredible kids that are doing incredible things, it takes something to do that. And they just don't see that worth in themselves. And I was like, I want you to see that you have that worth. I want you to see that you have so much to offer to the world and that you can, if there is a dream you set aside, you can go back to it, or maybe there's a new dream, but you have time. I mean, there are so many people like, you think RVG, I mean, she didn't even become a Supreme Court justice until after she was an empty nester. And then look what she did, the second half of her life.
Yeah.
So we were living longer and we have so much to offer. And it's like, I just want women to feel that. I want them to see their worth and to be excited about life.
And that's your Spark experience.
Yeah, my Spark experience is really helping them with that transition to see, how to get twice the meaning, twice the connection, and twice the joy in the in that as you're coming into your empty nest year.
Okay. And that's how you start. I know we met, several years ago and have been hanging out and been friends ever since.
Yeah.
And so I've actually been fortunate enough to see the Spark experience at infancy and how that has grown. And now you've got that as its own program. It's exploded to now you're doing full on year round.
Right. So now I'm getting ready to launch in January. I'm going to be launching what's called Sparkle. And this is make the second half of your life the best half. And that really came from the desire for these women who want to grow into the future, that went through the Spark experience. And they were saying, we really want to grow into the future. And how do we do that? How do we keep going with this? I wanted to keep going. And, when I was looking at it in my own life and what the things that I've planned, and I think one of the things that we do in society is, the first half of life, we have this societal ladder, and it really tells you what to do, right?
You just check the box.
Check the boxes, right? Get a good education. Then you get a job and you climb the corporate ladder, or you start a business and you become successful, find a spouse, have some kids, right?
Make sure that they make sure that they go to school.
Right, exactly. So it's like this societal ladder. But what do you do the second half of life? Where's the plan for that? What does that look like? And so, we're told, when you get to like 50, it's all downhill from now. No, it's not all downhill from now. I know that's common in the United States, right? Is that, elders maybe it's changing, but it's more common that the older people we kind of put aside or whatever. Where if you look at other countries, they're really the respected elders. They have the wisdom, right? And so that's what I'm saying. We have so much to offer people. We have so much to offer. And so it's this plan of how to do that. And the other part of that is we do a lot for wealth planning, right? I mean, I'm sure you've done that, right? You probably have like your estate planning and a financial advisor you work with, and to make sure that part's taken care of. And a lot of people have wills and all this end of life stuff. But what about the living part of the second half of life? And so this is really, the Sparkle is, how do you make the second half of your life the best, Matt?
I like that. And make the second half the best time.
Yes. Because I really believe that it can be. I'm living proof. I mean, it's great right now. I'm
Tell me, and I know, speaking of great, I know, because we chat on, often, and you took a vacation that was great when you took your husband out. Do you want to share a little bit about that, what you did? Because it was a surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise. So when he turned 60, I did this complete surprise trip. I arranged it with his work, everything, so that I took care of everything. He had no idea. I packed his bag, and then we took him to the airport. And so the first place we went was Italy.
When did he realize that you guys weren't just going to dinner? or going to the 7-Eleven or something?
Kind of when we got to the we were going to the airport, I was like, okay, here's your ticket.
Okay.
Here's your passport. I was make sure you got that. But he really was like, we're showing up at the airport, and it was like, okay, so, and he was like, oh, I thought we were gonna go like for the weekend, New York or something like that. So we went to Italy. We went several places, and it was like every day was he didn't know what we were gonna do. So we were in Rome. We went to Amalfi Coast, Positano, and then we went to Turkey. So we went to Cappadocia. We went on a hot air balloon ride, and did all this stuff. And
How long were you gone?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. So he's like getting off work or thinking that he's gonna, maybe catch a game, or maybe you guys are gonna go to New York for 2 days and a half.
Right.
And you're gone for 3 weeks.
Yeah. So it was a blast.
Yeah.
To Greece, it was like planes, trains, and automobiles. We kind of did it all.
Okay.
Even the hot air balloon rides.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, one thing I co-authored a book during my empty net. So it's like, I was just like, what are things I wanted to do? And I just started doing, but I made a plan. I knew things, and I continue to have that planned out. And I do a lot of things. Even with like, how do I have the best relationship I can with my adult kids? And,
Yeah, share a little bit, Devin, since you shared a little bit about your husband. Tell us a little bit. You have some talent there. So.
Yeah. So both are like doing like fantastic. So my oldest he's actually doing what I started out as like, so he's doing like marketing and is a copywriter.
Okay.
And he's doing extremely well. He's writing $1 million promotions. I mean, he just turned 27, and he's investing in real estate.
Okay.
He's got it going on.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's traveling.
Right.
He's gone to Bali and Thailand and Egypt, and he's doing all this traveling, and
Because he can do his job from anywhere, right?
he can do it from anywhere. And he said, I saw you doing that, and so I wanted to do that too. And I used to take him to conferences. I took him to the GKIC and magnetic marketing conferences with me, and that's really where that kind of opened his eyes too. And so he was like, I want to have that kind of life too. I want to be able to, I saw how you lived your life, and it's great because he writes me these beautiful cards for like Mother's Day and my birthday, and they're always like, I appreciate you so much because I feel like I have the life,
No, that's you planted that seed.
Yeah, and you took me these things, and and it's awesome. He brings me flowers every week. The other day he just like stopped by, came in with flowers, gave them to me, gave me a hug, and he's like, I gotta go.
Right. Wow.
It was awesome. And then my younger son is out in LA, and he is in the music industry, and he just turned 22, and he's like one of the few he doesn't have, that's how he supports himself, is 100% off of music, which is really a tough thing to do.
At any age.
At any age, yeah. It's very, maybe 1% of everybody that can do that. So he writes music. He's, songwriter, but he also writes for other people. He's had stuff placed on like Baywatch. They redid all the music for the Baywatch when they stripped all the music out, and then they hired people to write music. So if you go on and you watch Baywatch now, it is remastered and it has all new music, and you'll see my son's name in there, Dalton Cyr. But you'll see him in there. He's written, and you'll hear him singing, you'll hear him playing guitar on songs. So he's all in there. And then also like Baywatch Hawaii, he also did songs for that. And movies, stuff like that he's had. He has a movie coming out that he's in. So he's doing a lot of stuff. He worked with Will Smith.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he did the engineering work for that. He does.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And
Stuff.
yeah, and so that's, I mean, the thing is when kids, and he's been doing that for, I mean, he didn't even said it where you know.
Well, yeah, he's been doing it he's been doing it a long time.
Well,
Um,
and it wasn't, I mean, it just, we always talk all the time, especially for our small business owners and big business owners, that it's not easy in the beginning, and it really is never easy. But it gets to a point where you can manage or even survive before you can thrive. But first you have to survive. I mean, you didn't wake up and your son, and just say, okay, and you're going to do your spark experiment, and then it's a success. You have to build up to it. You have to stay at it and be consistent.
Yeah, and I think you have to have clarity on what you want and who you want to go after. Who is this for?
Yeah, what's your audience? Who do you intend to serve?
Right. And so, that's important. And that took me, I did testing too. I mean, I didn't just like throw it out into the world. I tested, and then I refined, and then I put a new version out, and then, I've had it iterated to a better version, right? And then, to get it to where I'm like, okay, now this is what I want to put out into the world, and what people want, like, how is it going to serve people out there? This isn't for me, it's for the people out there. Right?
And the results are speaking for themselves, because people are saying that, their lives have changed. They've found their new mission. They see the vision.
Yeah, it's been great. Couple of really powerful ones. I had one woman who they confided into me before the program started. She said, "I just feel like I'm passing time until I die."
Glory.
And it's still it chokes me up, because I think, God, that's so sad. And she's a remarkable woman. She really is, and super smart, super creative. She just has being vibrant, funny, and she has just so much to offer the world. And I when she told me that, I mean, I just my heart just broke. And now she's so excited she has a plan of what she wants to do, and she's working on that, and she's excited about it. And that's the most important thing. She's excited about what she's doing, and she's doing all these things, and it's fantastic, And I've had other people say it's like one of my favorites is it's like therapy, only more fun.
What?
And I really like that, because that was important to me. At this stage, we want to work on these things, but I wanted it to be fun and interactive and engaging, and not just like where you're in a school classroom and somebody's lecturing at you. So it's not like that at all.
We didn't really learn that way as a child.
Yeah.
As children, they beat it into us.
Right.
But as adults, we have we have more choices. So that doesn't work. It has to be engaging.
Right.
The information we're providing has to be something that it can't just be good information alone. It has to be, you have to be receptive, and so I imagine that's a barrier in of itself of, you have, women that come into your program and maybe their guard is up, so they may not be as receptive to the information that you're sharing. So how do you kind of overcome that and help someone through?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not, I do like a kind of a group thing. I have something that's like called the Spark Playbook. And part of that is for them to go back and have inner reflection, so they can do things on their own if they want to. Maybe they are comfortable sharing something, or they can share bits and pieces of it. But I find I break into discussion groups too, so they are in a smaller group, so they don't have to share for like everybody, but they're with maybe 2 or 3 people,
okay,
4 people. And what I've found, and everybody has said to me, is that they were nervous about coming in and sharing, but then when they get into these small groups and they hear other people talking, they're like, wow, they feel the same way I do, or they have the same issue that I do. And so it was like very therapeutic to be able to have somebody to talk to and share that with. And so they do open up, and they really become very close. It becomes like a trust circle. And I think it's more comfortable environment, because everybody is there to work on that. Everybody wants to grow that's in there.
It's almost like a mastermind. You think of mastermind, most of the time I know in our world, it's a business mastermind where you're developing each other's businesses and helping us each other do better in business and analyze, critique, support each other in business. this is based, sounds like it's that,
Yes.
except for our personal lives.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that I always talk about like intentional versus convenience. And in the first half of life, especially like when you're raising kids, a lot of your friends and your connections, I think, are more of convenience. It's your neighbor. It's you go to your kids' activities and
Those are your friends.
those are your friends.
Yeah.
But then what I have a lot of women tell me is that it's like, where am I? I feel alone. I feel lonely. I don't have any friends now because those conveniences, like, I'm not going to the kids' games anymore. I'm not going to their plays. I'm not going to these things. And so how do I find friends and people that I relate to? And so one of the things that's happening inside these groups is that that's an instant bond that people have is because they're empty nesters. They're facing the same kind of struggles and they all want to grow. They all want to be intentional about their future. And so they find these other people that are like them, that like-minded people within that group.
Okay.
And so it's very quickly people will say, gosh, I feel like
Known you for 30 years.
yeah, like they can't believe, because the Spark experience is, I have a live event that you can do, which is, really just over a couple of days. But I also have a 30-day, like an online, a virtual one. And so it's within 30 days. So within 30 days, they're like, man, these people are my friends now, and that's for
Well, you're talking about it, making a genuine connection. And I think nowadays with phones, computers, you pull out your iPad, then you're putting that down, then you're pulling out your laptop, then you're closing that up. You're on your phone at the same time. I think that we miss a lot of just a good old-fashioned, genuine connection.
Absolutely.
So taking the time out, almost like we say, working on your business instead of in your business,
Right.
we can sometimes find ourselves going through the motions. I know I have.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, and then days pass, weeks pass, months pass, some cases years pass, and it's just the same thing. Soccer practice, wrestling, basketball practice. Then you go to work, you come home, dinner, laundry. You have your vacations planned, but it's, things can be very much on autopilot. But going to like an experience like the Spark experience, we get a chance to actually leave the outside world outside and actually work on ourselves.
Yeah. And what do we want, And that's a big change for people, especially for moms who have, traditionally they put so much focus on everybody but themselves. And so it's like learning how to turn that around and have the focus on themselves and giving themselves permission to do that. And, even remember who they were and kind of reclaim that, because I have so many people say, oh my gosh, I had one woman, it's interesting the things that people forget, right? And so growing up, she loved to dance. And she was like, I completely forgot that I even like to do that. And so she was like, I'm going to take dance lessons, and she was so excited.
You got a spark.
Yeah. And so it's not always like, I think there's a lot of things out there like, oh, get into direct sales or wait till you're a grandparent. Or I'm like, what if you're never a grandparent? There's a lot of advice out there that I think is kind of faulty. And some people may want to start a business, but that's not for everybody. And, traveling's great, but that's, you're not going to necessarily be traveling constantly. Most people are not going to be traveling all the time.
Yeah, you need a really big trust fund.
Yeah. Yeah. Or may just not want to travel all the time. And so it's like, what do you do in that other time? And then there's also like, with Sparkle, I go deeper into some of those things like marriage. The second half of marriage is different than the first half because first half, you have your court and stuff, but then if you have kids and how these people are empty nesters, so they have kids, your focus has been on your family.
We didn't even talk about that. I mean, I didn't even think about that part. So then what? Then when it's just
the two of you.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And sometimes it's like, how do we reconnect? And how do we, what are we going to do? And how does that transition look from retirement? I have people say, I'm scared to death about retirement. Like, I'm not sure what that's going to be like, if I'm with my spouse all the time, or maybe the husband is he's an entrepreneur and he wants to keep going with his business because that gives him a lot of meaning. But now the wife over here, she's got so much more time on her hand. And, because she typically, when someone becomes an empty nester, it's not even the men that help a lot and that are really involved. Men typically gain about 20 hours of time. Women typically gain 40. So they have twice as much time that all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, would I do this? And what I find happens if you're not intentional and you're not conscious about you start filling yourself up with stuff that doesn't really make you happy. It's just
busy work.
Right? It's just like somebody asked me to do something, so I'm going to do it. Or I start, but it's not things that they're really passionate about or really makes them feel significant, and I think everybody wants to feel significant, so it's that. And it's also that, how do you deal with that dynamics and finding things together that you can do that are adventures, but outside of traveling, so those are some of the things, so my husband and I, we have a lot of things that we've sat down and we figured out some things. So we're going to take the stained glass class. We're going to learn how to do stained glass. We may hate it. We may love it. We may want to keep going with it.
It's a project that you're committed to.
That we're going to do together. And so, and he, suggested that to me. And so it doesn't, that may sound like, oh, this is something that the wife wants to do, and he's just going along, be a good guy or whatever. But he really, he wants to do it. I do too. I'm really interested in it too. So it's, finding those projects or finding those things. There can be many different things. My sister is taking, with her husband, they're taking a class on the Constitution, So it's different for everybody what those things are, but it's for how to figure out what those are.
Yeah, something that you both can get into.
Yeah.
And it's and learn and develop together.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to it. I think it's.
Well, on the topic of of real story, or let's talk real. I know we were talking about a real estate scenario before, but do you have you mentioned the person who, when they hear that maybe felt invisible or felt like they had lost their purpose. What does that look like? Share a story with you can protect them, keep the names protected to protect your innocence. Yeah. But a story of what that looked like on the other side for that person or someone else. That how that really has changed their life.
So for this woman, she said she just really felt like she was shrinking. She would be in a room and really not know what to. Wouldn't talk really. She would just kind of be silent. Even with her family, and her grandkids and all this, and she just felt really silent. She started doing a lot of traveling. By herself. She would go on trips by herself. And she did meet some people doing that. She made some friends that way. And that was good. But she'd come back and she'd be with her whole family and she just felt like that. And
it was almost escaping, but still at the end of the trip, whether it's a week or a month.
Right. And she was she was single, so she didn't have a spouse, so it was it was just her. And so she was really struggling, and what I helped her to do is to show her worth and show her some things we talked about. We were able to revisit and see what was important to her and what were things that she loved to do. And so she's doing some really cool stuff with her grandkids now. So she has this whole room that's for drawing and, whatever. So she likes to do stuff herself. And so she started, I said, well, why don't you start doing stuff with your grandkids? Maybe you could teach them. And so she started doing that. So now she has this special bond with one of the kids that's really into art. And she does that. And for another one, I was like, well, why don't you do be a pen pal and you can write letters, and maybe you send something and they can write back. And so she started doing that. And so we just started with some small things like that. And, she's just thriving now. I mean, she really... she is, taking some courses now, and she's dating again, and you know,
So it's like a whole new world.
it's like a whole new world for her, and she's really happy. I get little thank you cards from her every once in a while. She'll send me like something, or she'll follow me and say, you know, you really have changed my life, you know, and to open that out. I don't feel that way anymore.
And how does that make you feel and maybe she might have done it on her own at a later time,
Yeah.
you know, maybe, but the fact that at this moment you were instrumental in that transition into that
It makes me
discovery.
feel incredible. Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel really good because, again, I really believe there's so many women that don't just see. I see it all the time. I was in Epcot. I went to Epcot to the Food and Wine Festival.
Okay.
And my husband and I are riding down in the elevator. There's these two women there. They're obviously on vacation. And you could tell they were, you know, they had to be in 50, 60.
Okay.
You know, they were like my age. And not talking, not smiling, not having fun.
Just
We sat down at breakfast and they sat at the table next to us. Didn't say a word to each other the whole time. Just kind of sat there, and I got, that's so sad. You know, I mean, I am positive these women have something. And if you think back when you were younger, like in your 20s, I mean, most people are going to say, you know, there was what they were like then is different than what they're now. And so it's like recapturing some of that youth and that excitement that you had, you know, that you're excited about life again. That's really what it's about. So it feels great when I can help somebody remember who that person, that they're really who they are. It's not that I'm, the service, they're the person. They're the one that has all these great
they
things.
have to do the work. They have to, you have to pull it at the end of the day. You can't pull them out.
Dig in and remember. But it's helping them to do that and remember who they are and like reclaim that and, you know, resurrect that dream that maybe they had. And so it's really awesome. Awesome stuff.
Sometimes our why gets away from us.
Yeah.
You know, we have a why, and it's okay for our why to change. Our purpose changes. Like you said.
I have a great story about that. So for me, you can get stuck and not know it, right? So I was stuck on the mommy track, like when I became an empty nester, and I didn't even realize that I was doing like cool stuff and everything. But there was a point where I was really too involved still in my kids' lives, you know, like in a bad way.
Right. Okay.
I wasn't helicoptering, but I was too involved. And I was specifically my younger son I'm going to talk about because he was really the one that made me an empty nester because he was the last one to leave, right? But I had been really involved in his life because he had a business, you know, he was a child performer.
Yeah.
And so we traveled.
Job for you, which is the whole job for you.
Right. And so, you know, we were part of his business. You know, he formed a business and we used to tour around the country while he would perform and things like that. I'd had to take him to auditions and meetings with, you know, executives and all this stuff, right? And lawyers. I mean, there was the whole thing, right? And so I was really, really involved. And when I became, you know, he was going to go off and do his own, but I was still like kind of helping him, or so I thought, right? I was helping him. And all of a sudden, it was like, I had a conversation with him and he was like, you know, actually what it was in the millennium, when the 2000, we sat down for a dinner. And we always do goals. Our family always talks about goals at the end of the year and what are you going to do next year? And so I was like, well, it's like this big millennium, like, so let's look at the last 10 years.
Right.
Both of you, like, what are some of the great things that you've accomplished over the last 10 years? And both my kids are like, they have cool stuff to talk about. Something, this is great. They both have stuff. It'll be awesome. And Dolphin was like, you know, I don't have anything to say. Like, he kind of like sat down and I was like, what's going on here? And so we dropped it. I was like, okay, I'm guessing they pick it up.
Right.
Okay, I'm moving on. And then I talked to him later and I'm like, what was that about? And he's like, well, I don't, you know, if you guys, all the stuff I did, like, it was because of you and Dad. And I was like, no, we were there.
Right. I can't play the instrument. I can't write.
Like, you're the one that had to, like,
Yeah.
sing and write the songs and show up and do the performances on TV and all that stuff. I said, I didn't do any of that stuff. You had to show up and do that. And so then besides that, music aside, there's all these other things about, so I started going down the list of all these other things that were outside of that, just as a person, what he's done, right? And charity has been involved in, and all this, different things. And so then he could see it. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm too involved. I am like holding him down. I'm keeping his confidence is being affected. And what it really came down to was I had a older sister who had cancer. And before she died, at the point, we had a conversation because I was struggling with my purpose at that point, and this was years ago. And so I was struggling with my purpose at that point, and she said, maybe your purpose is to help these two boys. They're my stepsons, so and I came into their life at a young age. My husband had full custody, and they had a lot of rough, I won't go into it, but they had a lot of things they had to deal with. And so she said, maybe this is your purpose. Maybe it's to help these boys.
Still go.
And I didn't realize I was holding on to that conversation of like, this is my why, this is my purpose. And this is a conversation I had with my last meaningful conversation I had with my sister before she died. And I was holding on to that. So it was like being able to figure that out and let that go and say, it's okay for me to move on. I did that.
Yeah, a mission accomplished.
Yes. And I'm still going to be involved in my kids' lives, of course, but it's okay for me to have a new purpose, a new why. And so that was really big for me. And, once I had that conversation with Dalton and I got off the mommy track, it was a little bumpy for him at first because he was taking the reins and then taking three of us.
And bumpy for you as well.
You're right.
Yeah.
But, about a year after that, he was just really thriving and just amazing. I'm like so proud. I'm more proud of him taking the reins and, doing these things, even when it was bumpy, like that he was, making these deals. And I mean, because we're talking, this isn't like small
$600 contract.
like,
Yeah.
it's a major thing. And so I was just so proud of him that he was able to do that. But I don't know that he could have done that had I kept holding on. And I think sometimes as a parent, we think that we are doing the right thing. We want to do the right thing. We have the best intentions, absolutely the best intentions. But sometimes we're too involved and we're actually holding our kids back from thriving. And so, I think this is something that has been great. I've seen that with women in my groups too, where they've been able to kind of let go more. They start to recognize,
Yeah, and sometimes letting go empowers.
And empowers the kid, and definitely empowers the kid. And the parent, because we're proud, and they have their relationships able to move to a different level, which is really awesome. But if you can't let go, you kind of never get to that. You stay in that parent-child, and
It's like it's all. I mean, I can use the example. There's tons of examples, but just something as simple as teaching your kid to drive. I'm going through that now, and so she's driving. So now we're at the point where she has a license. She got a license, but now she'll drive, and then I'll drive behind her. But so she's fully on her own, kind of. Yeah. But I let her drive in front, so that way I can kind of critique or take notes.
Yeah.
And, but I haven't yet. I mean, even the other day, I had her drive from the store and then I said, okay, you can drive back on your own. And she drove back to the house. Then I'm calling. She's like, Dad, I'm still driving. Like, I can't be on the phone. I'm like, oh, sorry. But we do that, and so, but at some point we have to, she has to drive, or else she'll never. I have a friend who just started driving in his 40s, not a very good driver. I mean,
my mom was not a very good driver, and she didn't start driving until like in her 30s. And she was a nervous driver. She was just too nervous, because I think, your fear.
Yeah, you're less fearful. So it's that combination, I can take this corner, with the
and so it's like you have to let them kind of do those things. And, but when you do, it's amazing. And the conversations I have, like, just amazing. I have great conversations with my nieces and my nephew. Like, we have these really deep, meaningful conversations because I can talk to them as an adult, and it's just different. And if you can't get to that, it's like we're so afraid to let go because we're afraid we're going to lose them. But sometimes holding on, you lose them that way because they're like,
Yeah, it's almost what we do with opportunity sometimes.
yes,
We hold on to this one, but we can't let go of one to get this bigger opportunity.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. Or we hold it small and close, and
Don't want anyone to know about it.
yeah,
It stays just like that.
yeah, exactly. That's very true.
But yeah, that brings actually a quote of the day. Let me see. We have a quote of the day.
Awesome. I love quotes of the day.
Word. All right. So no matter how old you are, I'm sorry. No matter how old you are now, you are never too young or too old for success or going after what you want. And that's by Pablo. I don't know if that's Pablo Picasso, but it's Pablo. But that's the quote of the day. So let me ask you.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to hear more about the Spark experience, or if someone wanted to even just get some information about someone maybe having some similar feelings or know they're approaching that time and want to get prepared, and they wanted to maybe learn more about the Spark experience, participate, how would we reach you?
They could go to my website, which is thejoyfulemptynester.com.
Thejoyfulemptynester.com.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's the best place.
And that's the best place.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have social media, but I don't do a lot on social media because I rather have the conversations with people in person.
Yeah, this is a personal kind of thing. It's not like a widget. Here, like let me have 3 widgets, please.
Yeah.
And you just
So that's the best place to get me is on my website.
joyfulemptynester.com, and on with everything that they'll need will be there.
Yeah.
In terms of how they might be able to get started.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, friend, and you've been helping people. I appreciate what you're doing because there are a lot of people, lots of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that could use what you are offering, and hopefully now that you've been able to take it online, where before it was just in person.
Right.
And now that you're able to scale and actually provide it where people can participate remotely, I'm sure you'll be able to affect even more lives. Sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is just
All right. Awesome.
Big it up,
Yeah.
big it up.
Boom.
Clear